Hi, welcome to my channel, Budget Audio Review and Upgrades. Now I'm standing here with nothing in front of me. This is made just a link video, just to link a few videos together of me mending my JVC VN 300 amplifier. An amplifier I bought about 4 or 5 months ago, perfectly working when I got it, put it in the cupboard, got it out of the cupboard, then it decided it's going to have static noise on both channels. So you're going to see me going through the process of mending this amplifier and not starting off in the right direction straight away, but finally finding out what the fault was. I want to just show you a little quick video of the actual condition I got this amplifier in. Just think, something maybe just to bear in mind when you're buying your amplifier, receiver or tape deck or anything electrical really, is where has the person kept this in the past. And in my particular case it looks like maybe a garage or a loft or something like that, because a little bit of rust has got into the screws inside and maybe onto the transistor legs and crept up into the actual casing of the transistor maybe as well. Now these transistors are normally coated, most of them anyway, with some kind of like paint kind of thing they put on them, and normally black. And when you see a transistor and think, oh, something wrong with this, it's got black legs, but that's a protection which stops moisture getting in there and start eroding the legs of the transistors. So just something maybe to bear in mind. Anyway, just show you the video of the condition I got this amplifier in. Right, I don't want to teach anyone to suck eggs or anything like that, but this is the top of the unit. As you can see, the paint's kind of coming away at the top and that. But we're going to look through the vents here. Something maybe you could keep in mind if looking at eBay or going over a car boot or second-hand shop, something like that. When you can see inside, you've got a little bit of access to the inside through a grill or something like that. You may be able to get an indication of where this has been stored and how bad it could be once you get it home. So if we take a closer look on that grill, you can see straight away there's 3 screws there. It's got quite a bit of rust on them, so that's not a great sign. Just another close up there of them screws. We come around the back. If you didn't have a grill, you could maybe have a look at some connections here. And if we actually look at the record play DIN socket right bang in the middle of the unit, you can see there's just 2 screws there, and they've got a bit of rust on them as well. And that actual little silver bit around it, plate around that DIN connection, looks a bit like it looks like it's not seen better days, shall we say. But other than that, the actual inputs look fine. You're going down to the inputs, the screws for the speaker terminals, that kind of stuff. They look all fine. It's just maybe a little bit of a giveaway there that maybe not all's fine. It's not been stored somewhere nice and dry. And there we go. Now we've opened it up, we can see that a lot of these screws are in not a great state. They're in a rusty condition, and like I say, that rust can creep up onto the transistor legs and on some other legs of other parts in the unit, and make them start rotting away or get some interference in there to creep into the actual casing itself and cause aggro. So just something to bear in mind when you're buying some second-hand units. Try and have a good look at it before you buy it. It may save a lot of aggro later on. Okay, so that's the condition I got the amplifier in, and so obviously not in great condition. So anyway, I turned it on, and this was the static noise I was getting coming out of the speakers. Let's just have a look at the amp here. I've got the volume on about number 2. If we turn the volume down, there's no crackling coming out at all, but maybe very, very, very slightly. But as soon as we turn this volume up, get near the speakers, okay, so that's the noise I was getting. So this was on all inputs. This was on phono, i.e. your record player input, auxiliary 1, auxiliary 2, tape, and also tuner. And it was no worse on any of the inputs. So that pretty much ruled out that the fault was coming from the phono stage. It was more likely further on in the circuit. So here's a little video of me actually determining whereabouts in the circuit the noise could be coming from. Okay, so hopefully you can see the diagram clearly here. I just want to point out just a couple of things. The transistors are 2SC458s, and they are here. We've got a left and right channel here, top and bottom, left and right, and we've got 1 for each channel here. And over here is a little preamp here for your phono stage, for your record player, and there's 2 for each channel there, just boosting up the signal coming in from your cartridge. Now, I had the amplifier on phono, and the noise was there, as you heard. Also had it off of phono as well, on auxiliary 1 and auxiliary 2, and on tuner and on the tape input, and the noise was exactly the same. It was no different. So on the phono stage, it was no louder on the phono stage, even though these are problematic transistors. I'm going to leave them out of the equation at the moment because no extra noise there. So I'm going to concentrate on where the actual auxiliary comes in. So if we take this auxiliary 2, hopefully you can see it comes up here, along here, down here to your select switch, through the select switch, through a resistor there, another resistor here, through there, round here, through the loudness control here, onto the volume control, and finally through another resistor, capacitor, coupling capacitor there, onto the base of this 301 transistor, which I feel, going by what I can hear, is the culprit. So what we're going to do, we're going to replace this transistor on both channels, because both channels are making a noise, and see exactly what happens. Okay, so I think it may be transistor 301 and 302, these two SC248s, and before I replace them with a 2SC1815 with good results in that sharp cassette deck, so I thought, why not use the same transistor again? So it's exactly what I did. So here's the process of me taking the amplifier apart now and replacing them two transistors. Okay, so we've got the unit on the bench. I've took the lid off. That was just 4 screws to the side of it, 2 on each side. Now the lid comes off. Now the board we want to get to is where that yellow arrow is pointing, and you just see a couple of capacitors just sticking out from that board. We're going to have to undo these 2 screws here from the top of the unit, which is holding it in. But also we're going to have to turn the unit upside down and take the bottom plate off as well, which is 6 screws, and there it is upside down, bottom plate removed, and there's the board again shown by the yellow arrow with the capacitors just sticking out. We're going to have to undo these 2 screws here to get the board completely out. Now once the board has been undone with them screws, it's still a couple of little knobs here, the bass and treble controls, holding it in place, isn't it? Without removing them, you're not going to be able to pull it straight out. So just grab hold of them and just give them a fairly good tug, a good pull towards you, and they should just slide off the sliders. There they are, they're completely removed, and now that board, if we flick around the other side, you can see is loose in the unit, but we still haven't got a lot of room there, to be honest with you, to play with, because we've got wires etc in the way. And this is another little look at the board, and where we want to get to is the soldering part of the board, where the solder is and all the connections, and it's kind of underneath the underneath the tone, the bass and treble sliders. It's actually wedged underneath in between, so we're going to have to try and get them sliders out of the way so we can actually get to the solder part of the board. Now we look back on the other side where all the components are on. The transistors we want to replace are indicated with the red arrows, and now the blue arrows are indicating solder joints, or actually wire joints here with their wire wraps around some points on the board. Now we could remove them, we could cut them, we could remove them and resolder them later. We could take a picture or make a note exactly where they go. Then we could move that board completely out and put it on a desk or somewhere else to have more freedom. But I was looking about in here and I thought maybe I could get away with actually removing that board, and sometimes you can. It may make your life a bit harder, a bit more difficult, even with the board a bit more access to it. Still could be difficult, but I thought I'd give it a go. And a lot of wires and that etc seem to be coming over towards this volume control indicated by the yellow arrow. So I thought if I could remove that from the chassis, from the front plate, it'd give me a little bit more room, a little bit more hassle. So the unit on the top here, looking top down, I've got to undo these 5 screws here. We turn it upside down, I've got to undo these 5 screws here as well, and take the actual volume control, the dial, the pot, not the pot, the the actual little silver knob off the front. And for some reason I got a bit carried away and I took the speakers and select knobs off as well. There's no need to do that, just force of habit I think there. So there you go, I've got to undo this nut here once I took the knob off, and once I've undone that nut, the volume control now will go back into the chassis, give us more room. As you can see, that board now is laying down, we've got more room, we can get to it a little bit more, and I thought I'll give it a go from here. Okay, so this slider's still in the way, and I see these screws here, top and bottom, 2 screws at the top, 2 screws at the bottom. I thought, oh, if I take these off, maybe that slider will give me a bit more room. But all that's doing is holding the kind of bracket, holding this tone control board in place on the actual chassis. So this is actually doing nothing at all to hold the actual sliders onto the circuit board. All it is holding this little bracket that holds that tone control onto the main chassis. So undoing them would be pointless, so I'm going to leave them well alone. And there's just a side picture here showing you the tone control, this slider control. If you follow the black there, you'll see it actually goes into the board, into the circuit board from the underside and pops out the other side where the solder is. So you know, we're going to have to unsolder that. So if I just flick it over, you can see there that I've actually started to do one part of the tone control of the slider, where it's got 4 connections as indicated by the yellow arrows, and on the other side in the blue arrows you can see the other slider that hasn't been unsoldered yet. So I'm just going to show you a very quick video of me just showing you how I unsoldered one of them connections. So let's just have a little look at that video. Okay, give the iron a good clean, the tip of it, so it's nice and shiny. So we're looking something like that. Hopefully it's in the camera. The shine goes because of the heat, but it was nice and shiny. We're just going to introduce just a little bit of solder, not over the board, but I'm going to do it over here so you can see it, but you won't be doing it over the board, you just be doing it out of the way. But I'm just going to do it here, just a little bit of solder like that. Tad more, just to kind of like get the heat flowing from the gun to the solder, so when we come to touch it on here, on the solder on here, it should make it the heat transfer a lot easier. Have our braid ready, nice clean bit of braid in there. First of all, I'm going to move a few things out of the way. If you're going to get the part we're going to actually try and unsolder, we're actually going to dab straight away to get the solder melting. So around there, and that solder, hopefully you can see that change colour, that's starting melting around that joint. That just breaks the seal again, and then we're going to bring our solder braid in. Make sure we don't touch any wires, any parts. Fairly firm, and you can see it there sucking it up. Hopefully put it away. I've done it not long enough there, or there's too much solder on there, so just a bit more again, and away. And this one's got quite a bit of solder on it. They weren't as bad as the other ones I've done, but we're going to come in from another angle, and there you go. Hopefully you can see that one there actually moves. It's nice and clear, and all the solder's been taken away. Hopefully you got that on the camera. Okay, so there's the board with the top part of the bass and the top part of the treble connections both now unsoldered. Now if we just flick down to the other end of the board, you can see there's still some connections here from the other end of them sliders. These have only got 2 connections per slider now, as indicated by the yellow arrows soldered to the board. The actual red arrows is showing you some holes there that has got no solder. They're not soldered to the board at all there. This would just be a general board. Maybe they would have put the controls, they could put them either way up I suppose for different models, etc. But these holes have got no solder at all. It's just 2 connections down the other end of these sliders, so I've unsoldered them. That's the tone board, or the board itself, the sliders removed should I say, from the tone board, and there you can see the red arrows is pointing to the connections that were sticking through the board a little while ago. Now just get a little bit of get your soldering iron here and just remove the solder that may still be on them connections. Just make them all nice and smooth, and no solder on there at all, because when we come to push it back together we don't want any solder getting in our way. We want to make it nice and easy to push it back through to the board when we put it all back together. And the yellow arrow there is indicating a piece of card they use just to make sure that there's an insulation in between the slider controls and the circuit board, the tone control circuit board, just to make sure nothing shorts out. So make sure that that cable just lifts off if you wanted it to, but make sure that's back in place when we put it all back together. So there's the sliders the other way, so you can see what they look like top down. This is the board now, a bit more freedom. I still could have disconnected it complete like I said earlier by removing them wires and wire wrapped wires, but I can get to it now as is. And I've just showed you one of the transistors. I'm replacing 2, but this is one of the connections to one of the transistors that I'll be replacing. So I'm going to unsolder these and put the new transistor in. Now there you go, I've put it all back together now. I've got my new transistors. I put both transistors in there, as you can see. Maybe if I just show you this picture here, the red arrow is pointing to the one of the transistors I replaced, the other one's slightly out of view. And the yellow arrows are pointing to where I've just resoldered back the connections to them sliders. And you know, give that a clean. You can see it's quite messy there. Get a cotton bud or something, just give it a clean with some isopropyl alcohol or something like that, just to clean up that board and get rid of all the solder flux and a bit of mess and dirt there that's accumulated with us unsoldering the tone controls off that board. Okay, so I replaced both them transistors and turned it on, and I was getting exactly the same, no difference whatsoever. So obviously it wasn't any of them two transistors. Now, why I had that little tone board out, I could have actually carried on and replaced some of the capacitors in there if I wanted to, once I've gone to the trouble of taking them sliders out. But I didn't bother, just wanted to sort out the fault. I can come back to that another day if I so wish. So anyway, let's continue the fault finding process. Okay, so it wasn't them transistors. I've replaced both of them and we've still got the same problem. So I thought what I'd do next is actually start measuring some voltages on the board. And looking at the diagram here, the first kind of place that caught my eye and I see was here, 17.8 volts, right near the transistor we just replaced. So that's handy. I thought we'd dive in there and just measure this voltage, make sure we've got 17.8 volts there that goes through a resistor onto the base of this transistor. So I've got my probe, my positive on my meter on here, and negative down to ground, and measured that voltage. And that voltage seemed to fluctuate quite a bit. It was kind of random. It kind of fluctuated between about 5 volts all the way up to probably about 6 or 7, maybe 8 volts peaking. All over the place, just fluctuating. So that was obviously wrong. So I just followed the circuit a little bit up here with this 17.8 volts here. So I just followed it up a little bit. And we follow it along here, up here. We come to this transistor here. X701. If I just move this up, it should tell me what that is because I forgot. That's 2SC711. And looking it up on the internet, I found that this was another problematic transistor. What I thought I'd do is just double check the voltage here on the collector, and that was fluctuating, like I say, between about 5 and maybe 8 volts peak all over the place. I was tested the voltage here on the base just for a matter of interest, and that seemed to be pretty stable at about 5 volts, something like that. So I thought this would be a good idea to take this transistor out and replace this transistor. Okay, so there's the transistor we want to replace, right in the middle of the board there. And this is a picture I took when replacing the transistors on that tone control board. So yeah, it was there looking at us. So yeah, if you can see the orientation of it there, and it's also labelled up base, collector and emitter, and the flat side of that transistor is towards the right of the picture where the arrow's coming in. We'll just take another little look at it here. A little closer look. Like I say, the flat side of that transistor is towards the right, and the kind of curve, the half kind of like a circle, is where the arrow's pointing now. You'll see this change when we put the new transistor in, because the new transistor is wired up slightly different pin wise. The BC548 what we're going to use is pin 1 is collector, pin 2 is base, pin 3 is emitter, but the one we just taken out, the 2SC711, is wired up slightly different pin wise. Pin 2 is the collector, pin 1 is the base, and pin 3 is the emitter. So we're going to have to put this in slightly different to make sure we get it as it should be on the board. So as you can see now, I've kind of turned it 90 degrees, so the base goes to where the base should be, the collector, the outer pin goes to where the collector should be, and the other outer pin goes to the emitter, and the middle pin of that transistor goes to the base. So it's just a matter of just turning it around 90 degrees, and let's just have another look at a different angle, and just make sure that when you do turn it around 90 degrees, you check that none of them legs are touching each other, because it's quite easy, even though it looks like in this picture here the legs are touching. When we go back to this picture here, you can actually see there's a gap. Just double check none of the legs are shorting out, and that's that transistor replaced. Okay, so replacing that 2SC711 transistor has remedied the problem, and the amplifier is now fully working. Now, I wasn't too sure exactly what that transistor is doing. I've got an idea it's some kind of circuit protection, so I just want to show you a quick video of me maybe explaining, and maybe you could help me tell me exactly what that transistor is doing. Before I do that, I just want to mention a few voltages here after the fix, after I replaced it with that BC548, where before I was getting on the collector maybe 5 to 8 volts peak to peak, and it was fluctuating quite a bit all over the place, really at complete random voltages. And on the base of that transistor I was getting about 5 or 6 volts. After replacing it with that BC548, a fully working transistor, and taking that dud one out, I was getting about 17.2 volts on the collector, and on the base I was getting about 0.51 volts. Now that 0.51 volts did go down the I turned the volume on the amplifier until a stage when I was really loud, really loud, and that went down to about 0.22 volts. So I thought it's worth mentioning that, because you may be able to help me and tell me exactly what that little circuit is actually doing. So here's a little video anyway to explain it maybe just a little bit more. Okay, hopefully you can hear me. I'm having a few problems setting this up like this, but hopefully you can see what's happening as well. So I thought I'd come back to this transistor and see exactly what it's doing. Like I say, it comes down, if we just follow this here, the collector of it, it comes down and it hits through a resistor, it's the base of this transistor here, which we have replaced, and we've also replaced this transistor here. So if we actually do follow it down, the joint, you know, links up here and actually comes back down and comes up and actually hits the base of the other channel transistor as well. So it's connected to both bases, one on each channel. And if we come over this side of it, through a couple of resistors and diodes, it actually comes down and links up here to the base of this output transistor here. If we do follow it down, it actually comes around and links up to the base, the base of this output transistor here, and also on the main output as well on both channels. So I'm kind of guessing that this is some kind of speaker protection circuit in play here. I'm not too sure exactly how it works, but yeah, I've got an idea. Rather than some use a relay or something like that, this is some kind of maybe overload or some kind of speaker protection. Maybe someone who knows more about it than me, because I haven't seen that kind of circuit before, can come back and let me know exactly what it is. So yeah, just a little bit interesting here on this 2SC711 that we've replaced, exactly what it's supposed to be doing. Okay, so there it is. Maybe you can tell me exactly what that transistor's doing, but I do kind of have an idea that it may be some kind of speaker protection kind of thing, turning transistors off or something like that, doing something where it's actually protecting the circuit and save you blowing them output transistors. Okay, so what's the moral of the story really? I don't know really. Maybe it's just, you know, maybe not to jump straight in thinking you know exactly what it is without maybe testing a few voltages here and there and doing a little bit more homework. I don't know. We got there in the end anyway. Just a little bit tricky taking that tone board out. Probably easier on other amplifiers, etc. But we got there in the end, and even taking them transistors out, that probably nothing wrong with them at the moment. It's going to save time later on where maybe they would come a bit problematic, I don't know. But anyway, we got to the end. Maybe not the transistor or the problem we thought it was first of all, but we got there in the end, like I say, and it's fully working. So hopefully you got something out of this, watching this video, me mucking around with that JVC VN 300, which I'll put a link at the top to anyone who wants to go and see my review of that if you haven't already seen it, because it's a great little amplifier and well worth me mending that, that's for certain. And maybe, like I say, keep a lookout for these rusty screws that may give you a clue that inside some more rust may be waiting for you when you take that lid off. Okay, until the next video, I'll say thanks for watching, and I'll see you all soon.